Here at the AIPIA Congress about active intelligent packaging in Utrecht in Holland, and I have met Andy Hobsbawm from the company Evrythng. You just gave a presentation and it was very interesting. And first of all, give us the short version of Evrythng. Who are you?
We're an Internet of Things software company, so we exist to help people connect their physical products to the web and then create applications for them that do useful things for consumers and valuable things for business. So we talk about it in the way of making products smarter by connecting them to the internet and using our software to make them unlock value for the business.
And you're based in London, or you're a global company?
Yeah, we're sort of international. We're based in sort of Europe and America. So our headquarters are in London and New York, and we have an office in San Francisco as well.
How long have you been on the market, so to say?
Probably for about 4 years. So we started, our first full year was in 2012, and really we got our first bit of funding towards the very end of 2011.
And today you work with big companies around the world, or?
Yeah, so we work with global brands, international brands, so from Diageo and Coca-Cola to General Electric and so on, and those are our typical customers. Yeah.
So you're a company talking a lot about big data and so on, I suppose. And what about big data today? Is the companies, the brand owners, willing to accept the thoughts about that, or is it a tough job for you to convince them that this is useful for them?
That's a great question. I mean, it's the problem with data in some ways is that it's abstract as a concept. So I think the reason why people in the packaging industry find it easier to say, oh, that's a cool piece of technology I can put on my product on the label, it's harder to think about the value of data. But I was here to talk about how critical I think it is that you do understand that the value actually is in the data, because once you digitize something, it actually is pretty meaningless unless you can do something with the data. That's where the value is. So when people talk about data is the new oil, it's not just a glib marketing expression. It's because just like oil is a fundamental input into the modern economy, along with labor, so is data. And that's something that I think all of the companies, the brands and the packaging companies need to understand.
You also said that a product today is not only the thing that we see, it's not only the atoms, it's more than that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's sort of, in a way, what I meant about the point about data, that really when something exists, it is a combination of the physical, the hardware, technology, the atoms, the physical manifestation of that product, be that a chair from IKEA or a can of Coke or a washing machine, but it's also the data that's associated with that individual item. So the data shadow, if you like, can actually be bigger and potentially more valuable than the product itself. So that's what I meant about why data is so important.
And when we talk about Internet of Things, I mean, there are a lot of examples already, but is packaging a good example of Internet of Things?
I think so. I mean, this is something we believe very passionately in. I think there are some purists who believe that the Internet of Things is only about, a connected fridge in the smart home. And we think that's actually completely wrong. And as proof of why it's wrong, the term Internet of Things actually originated in the MIT Auto ID labs in 1999 with RFID. So RFID is a smart packaging technology. It's a tag with a reader you put on objects in order to connect them to the network. So the concept of the Internet of Things originally was not based on a connected fridge. And so we think it needs to embrace any kind of object, any kind of connectivity, whether or not that object is permanently and persistently connected, or whether it's connected episodically using smartphones.
And in your presentation earlier today, you gave a short description of how it could work actually from a supermarket to the brand owner with a package. Can you summarize that a little bit?
Yeah, I gave a sort of scenario of where how you can have there's three different sort of use cases. So let's take two simple ones: consumer engagement and inventory management. So sort of tracking of products and sort of protecting the brand. So a consumer could engage with a product in the supermarket or at home, and they get some kind of marketing experience, loyalty, content, an offer. And as they do that, that same data is then also used in the system to trigger an alert saying this is a genuine product, but it's in the wrong location. So the consumer gets a good experience, but the supply chain gets to investigate why a shipment has turned up in the wrong place. It could be a grey market trade violation, it could be something that's gone wrong with logistics. So that's a simple scenario of where one product, one piece of technology, one data system actually runs two different applications. So there's value from the consumer engagement and there's value from the supply chain. And so the more you do with the data, the more value you get out of your products becoming connected.
But all this builds on that we are using the smartphones very much in the shops, for example. Don't you think that we will come to a level where people don't do it anymore because it gets too much, sort of? Right now it's new. You can use your cell phone your smartphone to get information. But in the future, should we use the smartphone for everything? I mean, will it not be too much for us?
It's a very interesting question. I mean, it's potentially a slightly bigger question than this idea of smart packaging, this scenario. I think a number of things. Number one, I think that the smartphone, I wouldn't bet against it going away anytime soon. It's become our digital life hub, and I think it will remain so for the time being. Secondly, I think that it's important that you can use the smartphone as a remote control for the world without having to have an app for everything. So I think it's very important that you don't have to have an individual app for every type of interaction. That will start to become too onerous. But if the smartphone can just be used to tap something and get an experience, as long as the experience is valuable enough, I think consumers will do it. The third point is that in the future, as the cost of technology comes down, you may be able to have more autonomous interaction where you don't need to interact with the object, it does something intelligent on your behalf. However, the costs are going to vary. Right now, the costs that you can put that electronics into Nest for a thermostat don't make sense for a can of soda, but you already have what's in Nest in your smartphone. So by combining the smartphone with the packaging gives you that computational intelligence. And the final point I would make, I said it was a big question, is that I think consumers need to feel control over what they do. So the question is, where do you get to say what you want to happen? And if everything around you suddenly starts becoming smart and doing things on your behalf, you might get a bit freaked out. So I think smartphones are a useful bridge interface, almost a mediator, where the consumer can say, I'm in control, I choose to get this, I choose not to get this. And I think that's quite important, that agency for human beings.
But I think you're right also there when you say that it must be some valuable things that you can get with a smartphone, not only games or amusement. There must be some value in it, because we've seen examples, for example, in Japan, where they misuse the QR code with a lot of worthless information that people should use the smartphone to get, and maybe sometime also pay for the connection, sort of. And people are sort of don't use it so much anymore. From being on the front page, the QR code on every package in Japan, today they are on the back side of the package because it's not that popular anymore. So I think we have to be careful with what kind of information you can get from the smartphone connected to packages, for example.
Yeah, I think that is a sort of almost a basic rule of business and marketing, which is the value exchange. A value proposition, in its simplest term, is what value do you propose giving somebody in return for their money? So in the case of a QR code, it's what value do you propose giving somebody in return for them bothering to get out their code and scan it? If you don't make that valuable or useful or entertaining, then they're not going to do it again. QR codes are ubiquitous in Korea and China still, so there's also cultural things. Yeah. Maybe they do much more useful things with it. Maybe they just culturally don't mind that they scan something and get something trivial. I don't know. But I think the point about QR codes is the technology is it's what you do with it and how you apply it that will determine the success, rather than the fact that it exists.
But what about, one interesting thing about this must be the personal integrity. How shall we handle that? That we are connecting information from consumers in one way or another. Isn't that the problem for the future? And we're talking about, for example, transforming information from EU over to the States, which is probably not allowed in the future and so on. Isn't this a problem for this kind of thinking?
Yeah, again, I mean, privacy is a very, very big issue, and I think it's not constrained to the Internet of Things. It's a general, issue affecting the internet industry, I guess. And you're, I think, referring to the safe harbor question. I mean, these are complex things. I think our view, as our role as a data management platform and an application enabling platform, is our job is to make sure that you can connect physical things to the internet and you can manage them, their identity and all the real-time data, so that people can build the best applications possible. Now, there's all sorts of decisions. How do you make it cool? How do you make it useful? How do you generate ROI? How do you respect privacy? So we see our job as making sure that the software has all of the right controls and permissions and fine-grained access, controls and layers to make that possible. But ultimately, it needs the brand, the consultants, the agencies, lots of people to come together to create an application that respects privacy, is really valuable, generates results for the business. This is like business. It takes a team to do it,
I understand. And finally, is there any areas you should avoid with this kind of collecting of data? I mean, is there anything that you can say, don't go there now, to avoid, for example, legislation and so on?
I think it's difficult. Common sense applies to some extent. So, I think clearly you should avoid collecting data on children, minors, and exposing that in a way that could be dangerous for them, right? That's like a basic thing that if anybody misused, that would be pretty dumb. Same way, don't put people's credit card information online. I mean, there's some common sense stuff, but I think the problem is that social norms shift as well. I remember when Facebook first released Beacon, and there was an outcry over the invasion of privacy. How dare you automatically stream what I'm doing and let everybody see it? A few years later, they launched it again at F8. It was frictionless sharing, and everyone said, isn't this amazing? What I listen to Spotify turns up on my Facebook page. So in that intervening 2 years or whatever it was, social norms had shifted. So you have to take into account what proposition is right for the times, or where do you think people are going to be, as much as what you need to do now. But also different cultures have different views on it. What Germany will allow is much stricter in terms of their social norms than what is okay in Texas.
Okay. But finally, you're in a business with a bright future, I suppose. That's your opinion, at least.
Well, I'm interested in sort of technology as a revolutionary force of change. I'm genuinely interested in what computers have done and are doing to society and the economy, and I find it fascinating. I think there are good sides and bad sides to that. I think there are unintended consequences. You could argue that the whole of climate change is one massive unintended consequence, and a pretty damn serious one, for industrialization and technological progress. But I believe that technology can ultimately solve more problems than it creates. I believe Internet of Things is as big a revolution in technology as the web was, because it's now bringing the physical world into the network. So I'm really interested and passionate about trying to help figure out what that turns into, and I think it can be a force for really positive change. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you.